Today we are revealing the terrifying story of a young man who thought he had finally found peace in life, but a shocking surprise finding inside his own house destroyed that feeling of safety and triggered a series of events he could never have expected. What started as a personal issue soon turned into something far more sinister, bringing out buried secrets, heartbreaking lies, and a path that detectives would fight to piece together. Samarth Devraj was 25 years old, and by early 2025 he thought he had finally found peace. He stayed in Calgary, Alberta, where he shared a loft in the Englewood area with his boyfriend, 27-year-old Iravan Malhotra. Samarth earned money as a freelance artist, usually making custom paintings and design work from home. Iravan had a more steady job as an IT expert, working for a medium-sized tech company in northeast Calgary. The mix of Iravan's regular salary and Samarth's changing freelance money helped them to split rent, bills, and everyday costs easily. Friends said they were a couple that had looked well matched for about 6 months. On the night of February 10, 2025, something happened inside their bedroom that changed everything. While Samarth was walking around, his cat jumped onto a shelf and hit a planter. The planter dropped against the trim near the wall and loosened part of the wood edge. When Samarth leaned down to repair it, he saw something strange. A small, round, black thing pushed just behind the trim. At first look, it seemed like a fancy screw top, but careful checking showed it to be a lens. Samarth slowly pulled the trim and found a hidden tiny camera. The gadget was connected into the wall with thin wires that went toward the ceiling. Worried, he started checking the room more carefully. Within minutes, he found a second lens stuck in the air vent above the bed. Both were placed in ways that gave a complete view of the bedroom, including the sleeping space and the work area where Samarth often painted. Samarth's first reaction was shock. He had never noticed these cameras before and had no idea of how long they had been running. Because of his boyfriend's tech knowledge, his doubt increased fast. That same night, after making sure that Iravan was working late, Samarth unplugged both gadgets and put them on his desk. Using his own laptop, he looked at their storage systems. The cameras were motion-started and programmed to send recordings automatically to a faraway cloud server. Samarth followed the settings and discovered login details still saved on the gadgets. Once he logged in, he got access to the whole collection of videos. The recordings went back several months. They revealed normal daily life. Samarth sleeping under covers, stretching before beginning a painting session, having meals or speaking on the phone. Every action that happened in that room was recorded and saved without his knowledge. The understanding that his personal life had been watched in this way was crushing, yet it was not the worst finding. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. As he kept looking at the files, Samarth found footage of Iravan entering the bedroom with another man. In the video, the two kissed. Then, the unknown man leaned straight toward the hidden camera, smiled darkly, and said the words, "He'll never know." That moment changed the meaning of what Samarth was watching. The cameras were not just tools of spying, but also part of a secret plan. The lies were double. Personal cheating mixed with planned watching inside his own house. The apartment, which he had thought safe and shared, was in reality set up against him. Samarth sat back from the laptop in horror. The proof was clear. The gadgets were hidden in fixed spots. The files were uploaded regularly, and the actions on the recordings proved that the people involved knew of the cameras. For Samarth, this was not just an issue of being betrayed. It was a case where his trust had been used to such a level that his house had been turned into a spy station. The next hours were spent in quiet. Samarth pulled out the cameras completely and put them in a drawer. He copied the saved footage to a locked drive for safety. He stayed away from calling or texting anyone right away, partly out of fear of being heard or followed. He did not face Iravan that night. Instead, he stayed up, watching parts of the recordings to make sure he had not misread what he saw. For detectives who later rebuilt the timeline, this night marked the moment at which Samarth learned he was being spied on in his own home. What began with an accident knock of a flower pot revealed a network of hidden gadgets, illegal recordings, and proof of a boyfriend's cheating. The effect on Samarth was instant and terrible. Feelings of harm, fear, and lies all came up within hours. By the end of that night, Samarth was no longer just a person in his own apartment. He was a recorded subject on someone else's server, filmed without permission and robbed of privacy. The finding changed his view of his relationship and brought a dangerous new side, one where questions of technology, hiding, and power now replaced trust. The day after finding the hidden cameras, Samarth Devraj made a planned choice. He did not go to work telling Iravan Malhotra that he felt sick. This reason gave him continuous time inside the apartment and, more importantly, full access to the gadgets he had found the night before. Once Iravan left for his job, Samarth quickly logged into the cloud server. Again, his goal was not just to look through recordings, but to download and check the whole collection. The collection held dozens of clips, each one started by motion sensing. They recorded months of movement in the apartment. Most showed normal routines, but among the files, Samarth spotted a returning figure. The man was heavy-built, often wearing a navy hoodie, and looked relaxed walking around the room. Despite coming repeatedly, he never once stared straight into the camera, hinting either knowledge of its spot or careful planning. Samarth noticed that this man showed up with Iravan on many times. The body movements in the clips was personal and close. At first, there was little clear detail. The hoodie hid most features, and the man rarely stayed in view long enough for a good look. But in one recording, the man laughed while talking to Iravan casually. He called him Ira, a pet name Samarth himself rarely used. That short audio was enough to give a clue. Samarth cut out the sound and made a short clip. He sent it to his closest friend, Inviti Sangha. She had been his best friend since high school and now worked as a digital forensics expert. Samarth trusted her skills and thinking more than anyone else. By evening, she answered with a name, Parakram Sethi. Parakram was 26 years old. He worked as a bartender and also practiced as an amateur boxer. He lived in Edmonton but came to Calgary sometimes, often for nightlife or boxing fights. To the world, there was no clear link between him and Iravan. Their social media pages showed no pictures together, no location tags at the same places, and no listed friendships. But Samarth remembered him clearly. Months before, at a birthday party thrown by a shared friend, Parakram had been there. The memory now felt more important. That night, Samarth faced Iravan directly. He did not yell. Instead, he asked one easy question. "Who's Parakram?" The response was instant. Iravan's body went stiff and he paused before answering. His story was that Parakram was someone from his past, a casual boyfriend before Samarth. He said the relationship had finished because Parakram became clingy and he promised it was over long ago. The trouble was that the timestamps on the footage showed otherwise. The videos were recent, revealing meetings within the past few weeks. Samarth chose not to fight more in that moment. Instead, he turned to another way, Iravan's phone. Using a data recovery tool, Samarth looked for deleted stuff. The results showed messages that had not been fully removed. The texts were clear. "When can I see you again?" One read. Another said, "He's suspicious." A third warned, "If he finds out, we're both screwed." These talks proved an active relationship between Iravan and Parakram. They also showed that both men were aware of the danger of being caught. Samarth carefully saved his findings. He took screenshots of the messages and kept them. Then, knowing the need of protecting important material, he locked the files twice and kept them in many places. His goal was to make sure that even if his phone or laptop were broken, the proof would stay reachable. The heaviness of what he had learned settled deeply. The lies were not only romantic, but also planned. He had been watched in his own house, fooled about the presence of another man, and now faced written proof that his boyfriend and this visitor had talked about hiding the truth from him. By the end of that day, Samarth realized that the situation went far beyond a simple affair. He was no longer just a boyfriend in a broken relationship. He was a target of spying, a person whose personal life had been filmed and whose trust had been used. In his mind, he had been trapped, studied, and recorded inside what should have been his own safe place. For detectives who would later rebuild the order, this part of events marked the point where the mystery visitor got a name and face. The finding of Parakram Sethi as the returning visitor gave answers. The mix of video proof, saved messages, and Samarth's direct talk with Iravan built a timeline that would become key to the case. On the morning after proving the face of the man in the recordings, Samarth Devraj met with his closest helper, Nvidi Sangha. She was not only his longtime friend, but also a skilled digital forensics expert, someone who knew how to save and study electronic proof correctly. Samarth gave her the hidden cameras he had taken apart from the apartment. His request was simple: check the hardware, pull out data, and confirm who had set them up and ran their operation. Nvidi agreed without pause. She told him she would look at timestamps, match them with server access records, and figure out the buying details if possible. For detectives who later checked this stage, it was key because it showed that Samarth was already thinking like a victim building proof, not just a boyfriend caught in a personal lie. He had seen that the situation carried possible criminal weight. While Nvidi started her study, Samarth focused on another urgent job. Facing Parakram Sethi directly, he wanted to see how the man would react face-to-face outside the cover of hidden messages and spy clips. Samarth located him at his workplace. Parakram worked behind the bar at a downtown Calgary lounge that stayed pretty quiet on weeknights. Samarth picked a slow Tuesday evening to reduce the chance of a public fight. He waited until the crowd got smaller, and then walked to the counter. The talk that followed was short but telling. When Samarth showed a frozen image from the hidden footage, Parakram's response went from blank to something harder. At first he tried to look empty, as though he did not know Samarth or the situation. But when the proof was put in front of him, his body changed. His answer was angry and full of bitterness. "You think you know everything?" he said, his voice challenging. Then he added, "You think he chose you?" Before walking away, he said a final comment. "He told me you were temporary, that he wanted real." Samarth did not make the fight bigger. He did not argue or push harder. Instead, he left the lounge quietly, taking with him not only Parakram's words, but also proof that the relationship between Iravan and Parakram was not casual or far. It was active and emotional, shown in words that hinted forever for one and throwaway for the other. That night, Samarth came home and faced Iravan Malhotra directly. This was the moment he put everything out. The cameras hidden in the apartment, the cloud recordings, the saved text messages, and the talk with Parakram. According to later rebuilds, Samarth explained it all in order. The finding had moved beyond doubt. It was proof. Iravan's response was to beg for forgiveness. He painted Parakram as crazy and controlling. His claim was that the cameras had been put in without his knowledge, supposedly by Parakram, who wanted proof that Samarth would finally leave. He said he wanted proof he'd leave, Iravan insisted, showing himself as a victim of Parakram's actions rather than the planner. But this defense was right away destroyed by the tech work coming from Nvidi. She had already followed the buying history of the cameras. Records showed they were ordered through Iravan's own Amazon account. Logins and setup records were linked straight to his gadgets. The data pointed clearly to Iravan as the person responsible for buying, setting up, and running the system. For Samarth, this proof was final. He no longer thought about the chance that Iravan was not involved. The lying had been layered. Personal lies, spying within their shared house, and now planned lies when faced with proof. By late evening, Samarth started packing his things. Witnesses later said that no fight was heard. The feeling in the apartment that night was described as silent, heavy, and ending. Both men stayed under the same roof without talking. Before leaving for good, Samarth prepared one final step. He collected the main pieces of proof he had, saved footage, screenshots, and recovered data, and put them onto a flash drive. He labeled it Police. This step showed he was getting ready to bring in authorities, making sure that the material would not be lost or destroyed. The following morning, Samarth was expected at a planned client meeting but never showed up. The client later told detectives that missing an appointment was very unusual for him, as he was known to be dependable and on time with his work. His phone rang once when the client tried to reach him, but then went straight to voicemail. After that, the device went silent. When Samarth Devraj stopped answering calls and messages, It right away raised worry. His absence from work that morning had already been strange. But when hours passed without contact, his best friend, Invidi Sanga, made the choice to act. She knew about the spy cameras, the damaging footage, and the fights that had happened in the previous 48 hours. For her, quiet from Samarth was not just worrying, it was threatening. By late afternoon, she called 911 and shared her fears directly to emergency services. Calgary police officers were sent to the loft apartment in Englewood. Entry was broken when repeated banging went without answer. Once inside, officers recorded clear signs of a violent fight. A lamp had been pushed over near the living area. Pieces of broken glass were spread across the floor, and light marks of blood stained the wall near the hallway leading toward the bathroom. Each detail was photographed right away, creating the first physical proof of conflict inside the unit. The bathroom door looked strange. It was not locked, but it had been blocked shut from the inside with a piece of broken wood. Officers pushed against it until it opened. What they found was final. Samarth's body was underwater in the bathtub, still fully dressed. The water had cooled to room heat, hinting he had been there for several hours before finding. First look showed clear injuries. Bruising around both wrists showed the chance of holding either by tying or strong gripping. Behind the left ear, there was damage matching with heavy force hit, leaving a visible mark. The coroner later backed these findings, ruling the cause of death choking with head damage as a helping factor. The medical answer was clear. Samarth had been knocked out and then drowned. As officers locked down the scene, attention moved to the location of Iravan Malhotra. He was not inside the apartment, and none of his stuff hinted a planned trip. Building security footage gave the answer. Recordings from just after midnight showed him leaving the building carrying a large duffel bag. His speed was steady but fast, and he did not come back. The footage proved him as the last known person to leave the apartment before Samarth was found dead. A province-wide search started. Within hours, Iravan's car was found in Red Deer, more than an hour north of Calgary. The vehicle had been left behind a closed outlet mall away from main traffic paths. Inside the trunk and duffel bag, officers discovered damaging items, several burner phones, latex gloves, and a hammer. Blood marks on clothing inside the bag were checked and matched to Samarth through DNA testing. The proof strongly linked Iravan to both the scene of the fight and the throwing away of materials afterward. Along with the search for Iravan, detectives also asked questions to the second person identified in earlier proof, Parakram Sethi. He was brought in for official questioning. By many reports, Parakram looked clearly upset during questioning. He confessed he had talked with Iravan that day and that their talk centered around the growing doubt from Samarth. According to him, Iravan said, "He knows everything." To which Parakram replied, "You need to come clean." Phone records backed at least part of his story. Records proved a call between the two men on the day of Samarth's death, matching with Parakram's statement. However, detectives pushed harder. They wanted to prove whether Parakram had a direct part in the events inside the apartment. To answer that, a search order was done at Parakram's home. The most important item found was a notebook. Inside were scattered handwritten words, "He's watching us now." And this ends in fire or silence. These entries hinted knowledge of the spy system and the dangerous rise of the situation. The notes did not prove direct part in violence, but they showed that Parakram was more than a casual watcher. He had knowledge of the cameras, the dangers, and the thinking of the people involved. From the prosecution's view, this changed the judgment of his part. Even if Parakram had not physically joined in the attack, his level of knowledge and his recorded talks with Iravan showed guilt. It put him beyond the status of an uninformed outsider. Detectives now faced two important tracks. First, they had to find and arrest Iravan Malhotra, whose running and having of damaging materials tied him directly to Samarth's death. Second, they had to decide the legal blame of Parakram Sethi, whose words, actions, and writings hinted a deeper link to the crime than simple knowledge. By the end of the day, the case had changed from a missing person call into a proved killing investigation. The order was now built. Signs of a fight, a body found in the bathtub with proof of holding and heavy damage, a suspect running the scene with tools and blood-stained clothing, and a second man whose words and stuff placed him firmly in the circle of the crime. The forensic proof mixed with digital records and physical items found gave a solid base for detectives to move forward. Samarth was no longer a victim of hidden cameras and lies. He was now the victim of a violent, planned act that turned a private apartment into a crime scene. After the finding of Samarth Devraj's body and the recovery of physical proof from both the apartment and the left car, detectives faced the job of getting cooperation from secondary figures in the case. Among them, Parakram Sethi became a key focus. His earlier questioning had raised doubts, and the notebook taken from his home hinted a level of knowledge that could not be ignored. Prosecutors and detectives realized that getting his story could clear the timeline and strengthen their case against the main suspect, Iravan Malhotra. Under growing legal pressure, Parakram agreed to a limited immunity deal. This type of deal gave protection from the most serious charges if he helped fully and honestly. During official meetings with detectives, Parakram admitted that Iravan had told him months earlier about putting hidden cameras in the Inglewood loft. According to Parakram, Iravan said the spy system was meant to watch Samarth and gather proof that he would finally leave the relationship. Parakram further explained that Iravan had asked his help in setting up the network. While Parakram denied part in the physical putting of the cameras, he agreed that he had given advice about setup and had watched some of the live streams. His confession put him directly in touch with the spy system, breaking his earlier claims of limited part. He described Iravan's state of mind as more and more nervous. He said if Samarth reported it, he'd lose his job, get charged. He panicked, Parakram told detectives. This statement pointed out Iravan's fear of being caught and hinted a reason for getting worse. Detectives backed parts of Parakram's story through forensic work. Partial fingerprints belonging to him were found on one of the SD cards linked to the cameras. This showed direct touching of storage media tied to the illegal spying. However, forensic workers could not put him at the scene of Samarth's death. No DNA, no fingerprints, and no physical proof linked him to the violent events in the bathroom. As a result, prosecutors faced a limit. They could not go ahead with killing charges against Parakram, but decided that his actions still made up criminal behavior. Finally, he was charged with blocking of justice and being an helper after the fact. These charges showed his part in helping Iravan's spying and in failing to step in once he became aware of the rising situation. While prosecutors made official the case against Parakram, detectives focused on finding Iravan, who stayed at large. Their search led across provincial lines. Travel records, including bus company logs, showed that he had bought a Greyhound ticket under a fake name. The path followed him eastward into Saskatchewan. On the ground, detectives worked with local authorities in Saskatoon. Watching of low-cost motel near the bus stop narrowed the chances. Within days, officers found Iravan at a rundown place. He was taken into custody without fight. At the time of arrest, he carried many items showing preparation for long-running, fake identification papers, several $100s in cash, and a handwritten list of cross-border bus paths. Back in Calgary, questioning started. Iravan first tried to frame the event as accidental. Through tears, he claimed, "He said he was going to the cops. I didn't mean to kill him. We fought. He slipped." His story hinted a sudden fight rather than planning, but forensic study gave a different picture. The coroner's report recorded many blows to the head, matching with continued attack, not a single accidental fall. Proof of bruising on Samarth's wrists showed holding, hinting he had been overpowered. The medical findings matched with planned violence rather than an unwanted accident. Detectives faced Iravan with these details during questioning. He gave no further explanation beyond repeating that events, quote, got out of control. His story failed to explain the hammer, latex gloves, and burner phones found from his duffel bag in Red Deer, items that prosecutors later showed as proof of planning and hiding. With the mix of forensic findings, digital records from the spy system, and backing story from Parakram, the case against Iravan hardened. The district attorney's office prepared official charges. These included second-degree murder, showing the continued violence and deadly outcome, unlawful spying tied to the putting and running of hidden cameras without permission, and proof changing based on tries to delete records and throw away damaging materials. The deal with Paracram, while argued about, gave prosecutors insider proof of Erivan's behavior leading up to the killing. It also built reason, fear of being caught, loss of career, and criminal blame for the spy system. This story, mixed with physical and digital forensics, built the framework that moved the case strongly toward trial. The case of Erivan Malhotra moved fast once detectives finished the proof collection, and prosecutors made final the charges. The trial opened in Calgary and right away pulled public attention. Media outlets covered it daily, describing it as a case that mixed technology, lies, and violent crime. For weeks, the courtroom stayed filled with reporters, family members, and community watchers who wanted to see how the proof would be shown and whether justice would be reached. The prosecution's first witness was Nviti Sangha. She was key because she had handled the hidden camera hardware and proved the digital trail linking the gadgets directly to Erivan. On the stand, she explained to the jury how metadata from the cameras matched timestamps on the server and how login details tied the spy system to Erivan's accounts. She laid out the process in simple terms, making it clear that the cameras had not been put by an outsider. Every forensic step followed the system back to him. Her story built the foundation that the spying was planned and personal. Next, prosecutors called Paracram Seti. Under the terms of his limited immunity deal, he was required to tell the truth. He admitted he had helped Erivan by advising on the setup of the cameras and accepted that he had watched some of the recordings. His claim was that he believed this system was only meant to catch Samarth if he cheated. He denied any knowledge that Erivan planned to commit violence. The defense tried to push this point, painting Paracram as someone tricked into thinking the spying was merely about relationship worry. However, the prosecution fought back with the notebook found from Paracram's home. The writings, "He's watching us now, and this ends in fire or silence," showed that he was aware of the dangerous rise. Mixed with the fingerprints found on one of the SD cards, his story was not fully matching with the proof. Still, prosecutors focused their main case on Erivan, leaving Paracram to face lesser charges. The defense plan for Erivan centered on painting the death as the result of panic. His lawyers argued that the fight between him and Samarth had risen suddenly, that feelings ran high, and that the deadly outcome was not planned ahead. They tried to frame it as a fight that went out of control. The prosecution broke this claim with forensic study. Expert witnesses showed details of Samarth's injuries. The bruising patterns around his wrist revealed proof of holding. The damage to his head was not matching with a single fall or accidental hit, but with repeated blows. The coroner's findings showed that the length and depth of the injuries could not back the defense's version of a sudden loss of control. The answer was that continued violence had taken place. A key piece of proof brought by the prosecution was the final voicemail Samarth had left for Nviti before his disappearance. In it, his words showed fear and knowledge of the danger he faced. He's scared, and when scared people feel cornered, they hurt what they can't control. The jury heard the message played in court, giving weight to the idea that Samarth realized the danger of his situation. The trial lasted several weeks with story from forensic experts, detectives, and digital workers. The proof was matching. The cameras were bought and put in by Erivan. His stuff held damaging items linked to hiding, and the physical injuries on Samarth could only be explained by planned violence. The jury thought for just under 2 days. When they came back, the verdict was final. Erivan Malhotra was found guilty on all major counts, including second-degree murder, unlawful spying, and proof-changing. The judge sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison, a term showing both the violent nature of the crime and the planned invasion of privacy that came before it. Paracram, under his deal, avoided the most serious charges, but did not leave without results. He received a 5-year sentence for blocking and helper behavior, accepting that his part had helped the chain of events that ended in killing. At the sentencing hearing, the court heard a statement from Samarth's parents read aloud by Nviti. The letter showed grief, but also worked as a closing reminder of who Samarth was beyond the case. It ended with a line that left the courtroom silent. He loved, he trusted, and for that he paid the highest price. In the months after the trial, Local artists in Calgary created a mural of Samarth near the Englewood loft where he once lived. The artwork showed his eyes staring outward over the sidewalk, a permanent reminder of the case that had shaken the community. For those who walked by, it meant both the tragedy of his loss and the watchfulness required when trust is